Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be sharing my December wrap-up. Alright guys, so I'm sure a lot of you have noticed this wrap-up is super late. I typically post my wrap-ups within the first few days of the following month. However, I have been crazy busy, so I actually just launched a Patreon, and within that Patreon is a book club, and both of those things have been a lot of work. However, I'm finally starting to get caught up. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has already come out and supported the Patreon, either by joining or talking in the Discord. I am just blown away by the amount of support, and I love you guys so much. So thank you. I've been having a wonderful time, and definitely check out the Patreon. It's gonna be linked down in the description below. But anyway, I want to talk about the books I read in December because December was by far my best reading month of 2023. I only read, I think, like 12 or 13 books. However, most of them were actually 5-star reads. I think every fantasy romance book I read in December was a 5-star read, which has never happened before. And then there were actually a couple of like really emotional contemporary romances that were just absolutely amazing. So anyway, I'm so excited to talk about these books with you guys. And if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. And you can also check out my Patreon, also linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about the books I read in December. So starting off with fantasy romance, first up we have Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. So this is a novella that is set in the same world as the Crown of Nyaxia series, so Serpent and the Wings of Night, and then Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, which I still need to read, and I utterly adored this book. So I wasn't expecting this to be one of my top books of the year, but oh my word, was it amazing. So if you're unfamiliar with the story, we are following Lilith, and Lilith is a girl that was born with this disease, and she knows that her death is imminent. So she knows that she's probably not going to make it many more years, and is just kind of grappling with the fact that she is probably going to pass away pretty soon. Now, on top of this, her entire community has been cursed by this god to slowly wither away into dust and die. So Lilith makes it her personal mission that before she passes away, she is going to find a cure for this curse and save her loved ones. So she finds out that there is a vampire who has recently moved into the area named Vale. So she goes to Vale and says, hey, I will give you 6 magical roses for 6 vials of your blood, because she believes that vampire blood might hold the cure for solving this god's curse. And the story goes from there. So it is a romance between Lilith and Vale, and I loved it so much. It was just, it felt like, I can't believe this is a novella. I honestly felt like I read a 200-page book. I just loved their romance, and so much happens, and it just felt so fleshed out. It is one of the best novellas I've ever read. So if you are a fan of vampire romances, highly recommend Scorched Roses. Alright guys, I'm gonna be completely honest, I have been dreading reviewing this next book, only because I have no idea where I land in terms of ratings. It is anywhere between a 3.5 and a 4.5, and there were just certain parts I loved and certain aspects of the romance that I thought were great, and then the world building and the magic system was just a little bit chaotic, and yeah, my feelings are all over the place. But it is the Hurricane Wars. So this started out as Raylo fanfic, and you can definitely tell. It is also an adult political fantasy romance. It has the arranged marriage trope, and it is so incredibly Star Wars coded. So if you're a fan of Star Wars, you will probably love this. Now, for this book, we are following this girl named Taliesin, and she is an orphan that possesses this light power. So there is currently a war going on between, I'm going to say, the dark side, and those are people that possess this shadow power, and the light side of people that allied themselves with people that possessed a light power but have pretty much been killed off. So Taliesin actually possesses this light power, however, she's kept it hidden because she believes it'll make her a target to the people on the dark side, which is very correct. So this pretty much starts off with a battle that is taking place between the dark side and the light side, and Taliesin ends up using her power to save someone, and she is seen by a Lark, who is pretty much the ruler at the moment of the dark side, besides his father, who is like kind of retired, but kind of not. Anyway, Lark sees Taliesin using this power and was like, oh my gosh, I have to kill this girl. That power is the power that essentially killed my entire family. So it ends up being their romance, and it is just very interesting. So this really isn't a spoiler because we find out within the first 3 chapters, Taliesin actually ends up being the princess of another kingdom and has to take on the role in order to save her companions. And in doing so, she has to agree to an arranged marriage with a Lark, who at the time has no idea who he's just agreed to marry. So it is a very back and forth relationship between Lark and Taliesin. Like, for half the book, they'll be fighting, and then they'll have this like attraction, and then one of them will say something to the other to like make them angry, and then they'll be hating each other again. But I will say about 80% of this book was them going back and forth between being attracted to each other and absolutely despising each other and trying to kill each other, but not really trying to kill each other, because like if any of them actually got into danger, the other would step in and save them. So it was very back and forth. However, I did read the entire book in like 2 days, and I did really end up enjoying it. I still don't really understand what's going on with the politics. So like I said, I'm definitely gonna give this a reread, and I'm gonna read it physically along with the audio just to make sure like there's nothing little that I missed. And I'm really interested to see what happens with the sequel, because this does kind of leave off on a bit of a cliffhanger. But anyway, I really don't know who to recommend this to. I know if you're a huge fan of Star Wars, you will adore this book. However, it leans very fantasy in parts and then very fantasy romance in others, if that makes any sense. But overall, I did enjoy it, and I guess I would recommend. And next up is another 5-star read, and also one of my top books of the year. It is Anastasia by Sophie Lark. So I had been putting off reading this book because I knew most of my friends had mixed reviews, and also the audiobook was not available. However, I read this in December, and I was completely blown away. So first off, I will say I never would have guessed that Sophie Lark wrote this book, and that is no hate towards Sophie Lark. I just feel like it is so drastically different than her spicier, fast-paced, like mafia romance series. The writing is still similar, but I just can't believe this is her first fantasy romance book. This does not feel like a fantasy romance debut. You can tell she really put the work in creating this immersive world, and I think the biggest critique of this book is the pacing, which I understand, because she spends a lot of time really explaining these characters, explaining their day-to-day life, that you connect with them. And I applaud her. I loved this book. So I really hope she continues to write fantasy romance, because I will binge all of them. But if you're unfamiliar with this story, we are following Anastasia, who is one of the 4 daughters of the Romanov prince or king or whatever he's called. And he actually possesses a time travel ability, which is how he's kind of risen into power. Now, Anastasia ends up finding out that she has this time travel ability when one of the Cossack rebels, this young boy, tries to kill her father. She's able to stop time and prevent it. So that boy is named Damien, and he becomes her uncle's ward, and it's kind of their romance. But while all of this is going on, Anastasia is learning how to use her magical powers, and she ends up meeting this man named Rasputin, who comes to her family's estate and ends up saving her younger brother, who's very sick with this mysterious illness. So Rasputin ends up teaching Anastasia how to use magic, but he also harbors some really, really messed up secrets, and the story goes from there. But like I said, I adored this book. I will say the very end uses a trope that I am not a fan of, especially with emotional fantasy romances where there is a lot of death and like sad things that occur. There is a trope used at the end of this that made me very, very angry. However, that didn't take away any stars. I still gave this 5 stars because I loved it so much. So if you have been hesitant to pick this up, please give it a try. I will say the beginning half is very slow paced. However, it is 100% worth it. And moving into contemporary romance, first up we have Out on a Limb by Bohnam-Young. So this is actually the Hello Lovely special edition, and this book had been on my radar for quite some time. However, I was waiting for the audiobook to come out, and it finally released in December, and I can say this book is worth all of the hype. So the story is following Win and Bo. These two end up meeting at a Halloween party, and that Halloween party ends up resulting in a one-night stand, which results in a pregnancy. So they decide to become roommates to co-parent this baby, and the story kind of goes from there. But I just love this. It was so cute. You're also following these two people that are going through struggles of their own. So Win was born with a limb difference, but she doesn't let that hold her back in any way. So she is very confident, and she is just trying to do everything without any help. And then you have Bo, who ended up suffering from cancer and ended up losing a limb. And this was fairly recent, so he is still grappling with the fact that he has lost the leg and how that is going to impact his life. And on top of all of this, he now finds out that he's about to be a father. So I loved both of these characters so much and was rooting for them. My one critique of this book is these two people communicated so well for having not known each other prior to sleeping together. So these two are like masters of communication, which I don't think is very believable. I feel like it takes a while to be able to really express yourself and your feelings to another person. And they really didn't have any sort of fight, but they also didn't have a third act breakup, which I really appreciate because I feel like every contemporary romance has a third act breakup that is completely unnecessary. So I did like that. However, overall, I loved this book and highly recommend. And next up we have A Little Complicated. So this is a kind of love triangle contemporary romance, but I binged this while I was wrapping Christmas presents and I was sobbing at the end. It was just not at all what I was expecting, but also in the best possible way. So we're following this girl who is very good friends with these two twins. She's grown up with them her entire life. They're a little bit older than her, I think 3 or 4 years. But anyway, she ends up dating one of them only to have him break up with her on her prom night. So she ends up going to prom with the sweet brother of the one that broke her heart. Now, the brother has no idea that they were dating. They were dating in secret. So they start a relationship and end up going to college together. However, the other brother is also at this college and is living with his twin. So it is their romance. And our main character, while she does love her boyfriend and has loved him for years, she also might love his twin that broke her heart a little bit more. So it's pretty much all of the messy complications that go along with that. And oh my word, was it angsty, and you will be so angry with some of these characters, but also just fall completely in love with them. So I loved this book. I know Cheyenne from the channel That Tall Book Girl also really enjoyed it. And I was voice memoing her while I was reading it because I was just in shock. And I will say this book is not predictable in any way, but highly recommend if you're looking for a good emotional read. However, the book responsible for causing me the most emotional damage has to go to Unbreak My Heart. This book caused a roller coaster of emotions. However, it was amazing, and I will be thinking about this book for a very long time. It would have been in my top 10 books of the year had I read it prior to filming that video, but just wow. So the story is following Kate, and Kate has a crush on her foster brother Shane. However, Shane ends up marrying Kate's college roommate named Rachel. Now, Kate and Rachel maintain a friendship, and that is because Shane also is in the military and is deployed fairly often. So Kate will typically visit Rachel and help with the kids while Shane is away. Now, Rachel now has had 4 children. She gets into a car accident and passes away. So Kate decides to help Shane with the kids while he is grieving. Then they end up sleeping together, and from that interaction, they end up getting pregnant. So it is Shane and Kate trying to co-parent a new baby while also dealing with the grief of Rachel passing away and also trying to raise these other children, and it is just a complete mess. All of these people are grappling with such strong emotions, and you can tell they just don't know how to react, especially Shane. I was so frustrated with this main character. I hated him so much. There were so many times where I was like, there is no redeeming his actions. Like, he will have to pine like crazy. And I will say he does. He does a really good job, like, apologizing for everything he does, which is the only reason I was okay. Like, he groveled like a champ. However, it was just so many emotions. But overall, I loved this book. However, I don't think I've ever cried so much while reading a book. But highly recommend. Just definitely have your tissues ready. And the rest of the books on this list were all holiday romances, so I'm going to go through these rather quickly. So first up we have 'Tis the Season for Revenge, which was by far my favorite out of all the holiday reads. I gave this 5 stars, and this was very hyped last year, and I completely understand why. So this is following this girl named Abby who believes she's in the perfect relationship and is getting ready for her boyfriend to propose to her. However, instead of proposing to her, he ends up breaking up with her in a car. So Abby, with her friends, slowly starts to realize that her perfect boyfriend was pretty horrible and really took a lot of confidence away from Abby. She was slowly losing a lot of her personality to become the woman that her boyfriend at the time wanted, which is very upsetting and something that I feel like a lot of women can relate to. So then Abby decides that she is going to get revenge by dating her ex-boyfriend's boss, Damien. And it is Damien and Abby's relationship. And obviously Damien ends up being like the perfect guy. And I really enjoyed this book. I thought this book was a lot more emotional than I was expecting, really with Abby healing from everything that happened to her in that past relationship. Because like I said before, a lot of us have been in those relationships where you start to change yourself for that other person, which is pretty terrible. You should find somebody that really loves you for you. And that is exactly what Damien is like. He is just perfection, one of my favorite book boyfriends. So if you are looking for a funny, emotional, and just really, really enjoyable holiday romance, pick up 'Tis the Season for Revenge. And next up is Wreck the Halls by Tessa Bailey. So I will say I really enjoy Tessa Bailey's holiday romances. However, her other romances I'm never a fan of, and I have no idea why that is. Like Window Shopping, I read last year, I loved, and I actually did really enjoy Wreck the Halls. We are following the children of these two bandmates that end up having this huge blowout fight and completely separated. So the one is named Melody, and she has been living a pretty conservative life, trying to stay out of the limelight. And then the other one is named Beat, and he is kind of like he's more like out in the public. People like really like know him, and he's kind of like making a name for himself, other than the fact that his mother was a famous musician. Now, Beat, we find out, is actually being blackmailed, and we don't know who by, but he is in desperate need of money. Melody also is trying to get out of like the shadow of her mother and ends up agreeing to be in a show with Beat where they try to get their mothers to connect again and have a show together. Now, Beat and Melody have this instant attraction to each other, and it is their romance, but also there are a lot of like humorous elements of these two women that despise each other and not wanting to do a show together. And also there's some emotional moments where we find out who is blackmailing Beat and everything that goes along with that. So overall, this was a very quick read and very enjoyable, so definitely pick it up. And you guys are probably gonna hate me for this next one, but we have Lovelight Farms by BK Borison. So this is a friends to lovers romance. We are following this girl who is trying to save her Christmas tree farm. So she enters this Instagram contest and pretty much pitches her Christmas tree farm as this very romantic getaway destination. So she ends up winning. However, these people are going to come out and see her farm, and she realizes that she pretended to have a boyfriend and she doesn't. So she asks her friend, who she has had a crush on for a very long time, to be her fake boyfriend, and it is their relationship. I don't like fake dating. I like fake dating. I don't like friends to lovers. I've never been a fan of friends to lovers. I like more of a enemies to lovers or like really, really angsty romance. And this was just kind of adorable. Like they obviously both had crushes on each other, and it was fine. I was just a little bit bored, and I did not love this as much as everybody else. So I think I ended up rating this 3.5 or 4 stars just because I didn't find anything wrong with it. Like I had a fine time while I was reading it. It just features tropes that I'm not a huge fan of. So overall, if you like friends to lovers, you will probably love this book. Personally, I didn't love it. And next up was unfortunately a DNF. So we have Tangled and Tinsel, and this was a very popular Why Choose Romance last year. The audiobook was released this December. So I read it, and then I ended up DNF only because I was so unbelievably bored. And I could care less about any of these characters. So we're following this girl who ends up getting snowed in with 4 very attractive guys that she works with, and they just have a spicy time together. And I've never read spice that was boring. Like, I could care less. And like, even if I was in the mood for smut, this was not it. So this was my first book by this author. I don't think I'll be reading any other books by this author. I just don't like their writing style. And yeah, the spice just did not work for me. So this was not my thing. However, if you want to give it a try, it is a Why Choose holiday romance. I was not here for it. All right, guys, those are all the books I read in December. Thank you so much for watching. And I'm sure you guys have noticed that this outro looks a little different. And that is because if you are a member of my Patreon and you're in the Sorcerers Alliance tier or above, you will get your name shown at the end of my video. And also, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Aaron and Amanda. They are both in my top tier Paladin Protector tier. And if you join that tier, you actually get your name shouted out at the end of my videos. So thank you guys so much for being part of my Patreon. I appreciate you guys so much. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.